This lecture will be about fact question types in the TOEFL exam. In every passage in the new TOEFL exam, there will be 2 to 4 fact questions. These types of questions ask you to select what is true about either major ideas or supporting details. The answer choices are mostly paraphrased from the passage but are 100% mentioned in the passage. Fact questions are ones that look like the following. What you have to keep in mind is that fact questions and inference questions are not the same. As I mentioned before, the answers to the fact questions must be 100% found within the passage. Whereas for inference questions, you infer the correct answer based on the facts presented in the passage. Both questions are based on facts, but the correct answers of fact questions cannot be inferred, so be careful not to infer your answers. There are 3 main reasons to why test takers tend to select the wrong answer to these types of questions. The first reason is because they did not understand the passage. Second is because they failed to find the answer to what the question was asking for. And third is because they did not understand paraphrased answer choices in the question. If only these 3 can be solved, there will be no issue in selecting the correct answer to fact questions. If you're having a hard time understanding the passage, this would obviously mean that you're lacking reading comprehension skills. When you're in the middle of a TOEFL exam having trouble understanding the passage, one tip is to combine familiar words and phrases to figure out the context of the passage. This will allow you to grasp a few ideas from the text and help you solve questions. Failing to find the answer to what the question was asking for would be the hardest to solve. To overcome this barrier, you must first be aware of the common types of incorrect answer choices, which we will soon be discussing. If you're not able to understand paraphrased answer choices, set your focus to studying synonyms of essential TOEFL vocabulary words. The first type of incorrect choices are those that can be regarded as true only because it's common sense. You should never approach questions in the TOEFL exam with your background knowledge. And remember that all answers, whether it's common sense or not, must be found in the passage. The second type are those that mix facts and irrelevant information. They could be facts from the passage and completely irrelevant information mixed, or facts from the passage and another fact from the passage, but not about what the question is asking for. In most cases, half of the answer choice is correct, meaning they contain the answer to the question you're looking for, and the other half contains incorrect information, which makes the choice an incorrect answer choice. If you're not sure what the answer to the question is, first double check what the question is asking for and make sure the choice you've selected matches the topic of the question. Lastly, there are choices that use the exact same words as the passage, but deliver a completely different idea, or do not answer the question that is asked. Containing matching words from the passage does not make the answer correct. Understanding the choices is necessary in order to distinguish between right and wrong answers. Fact questions differ depending on the range of the question. It may ask about major ideas or supporting details. From now on, I'll be calling major idea questions type 1 and supporting detail questions type 2. Now let's say there's a passage on the Amazon River. A type 1 question would be, according to the paragraph, which of the following statements about the Amazon River is correct? To solve type 1 questions, first identify the main idea of the passage and understand the purpose of the question. Next, find the answer choice that paraphrases the main idea of the passage most accurately. The reason why you should be looking for the choice that best paraphrases the main idea is because, in most cases, the reason why type 1 questions are given is to ask about what the point of the passage is. TOEFL reading paragraphs begin with the first few sentences introducing the main idea, and then gradually narrows down this idea with supporting details. So identify the main idea through the beginning of the paragraph, but still read through the entire passage and solve the question. Now let's say there's a passage on plants and photosynthesis. A type 2 supporting detail question for this passage would look something like this. According to the paragraph, the Calvin cycle does not require sunlight because. To solve type 2 questions, first identify the keywords within the question. Then, find these keywords in the passage. The answer to what the question is asking for will be near the sentence that includes the keywords or in that sentence itself. After you find the sentence that contains the answer to what the question was asking, select the answer choice that best describes that sentence. Here's a sample question that we'll be solving together, but first, pause the video and solve the question. According to the beginning of the paragraph, the main idea is persistence of the Amazon River. The first sentence of the paragraph reads, "The persistence of the Amazon River left unresolved questions." Because it states that there were unresolved questions, you'd most likely expect the next sentences to be about these unresolved questions. And as expected, the next sentence states that scientists discovered that the river had developed a nutrient recycling system. This means that the persistence of the Amazon River is due to the nutrient recycling system, and since the main idea of the paragraph was the persistence of the Amazon River, we now know what this question is really trying to ask, which is, what is true about the nutrient recycling system? Now all we have to do is to find what the passage says about the nutrient recycling system and select the correct answer. Let's first take a look at the correct answer choice. The correct answer to this question is choice A. The river developed a process that circulated nutrients to the plants near the river basin. Choice A does not mention the nutrient recycling system, but that's because it has been paraphrased to something different. The nutrient recycling system became a process, continuously distributed became circulated, and river base in the next sentence became river basin. All points are paraphrased and match the passage. A becomes the answer to this question. B, C, and D are incorrect answers. B states, sunlight was the key to maintaining the environment. It's common sense that sunlight is key in maintaining the environment, but this fact was not mentioned in the passage. The only two sentences that mention sunlight also do not mention the importance of sunlight for maintaining the environment. Scientists discovered a cycle in the river by observing river-based plants. This was not mentioned in the passage at all, but even if it were mentioned, the question is asking for what is true about the persistence of the Amazon River. Therefore, choice C cannot be the answer to this question. Thick leaves facilitated the cycle of producing nutrients. The passage states, not only did organisms and animals rely on these supplements, but plants growing under thick leaves near the river base, as they were unable to absorb enough sunlight, relied on them as well. Since the passage proves that thick leaves did not facilitate the cycle of producing nutrients, we can tell that choice D is incorrect. The purpose of this video is to provide a step-by-step guide to solving these questions. But this is only a guide, so before you take the exam, I suggest you practice until you're able to quickly go through all these steps in your mind. Next is a type 2 fact question, questions that ask about supporting details. Now pause the video and solve the question. According to the paragraph, the Calvin cycle does not require sunlight because the keywords in the question are Calvin cycle and sunlight. Before we move on, keep in mind that in the passage, the Calvin cycle is also called the light-independent cycle, and sunlight is also referred to as light energy. The sentence that includes the Calvin cycle and sunlight reads, just as the name suggests, the light-independent cycle does not require sunlight energy during the process. It states that the Calvin cycle does not require sunlight, which means the following sentences will explain why. The next sentence is, the Calvin cycle uses ATP and NADPH produced during the light-dependent reactions instead. Through this sentence, we now know that the reason why the Calvin cycle does not require sunlight is because it uses ATP and NADPH produced during the light-dependent reactions instead. First, let's look at the correct answer to this question. The correct answer is B. It can utilize two other compounds for the process in place of sunlight. If you compare it to the sentence that contains the answer to what the question is asking for, ATP and NADPH in the sentence is represented as two other compounds and instead is paraphrased to in place of sunlight. Because the sentence in the passage is correctly paraphrased in choice B, B is the answer. Choices A, C, and D are incorrect. A is it can generate its own energy as an alternative to sunlight. Such fact was not mentioned in the passage. It does not match the sentence in the passage that states the answer to the question as well. If you did not understand the passage fully and thought ATP and NADPH were generated by the plant itself, there's a high possibility you would have selected the wrong answer. A is a type of incorrect choice where half is correct, the part where something else is used as an alternative to sunlight, and half is incorrect, the part where it can generate its own energy. It is performed in the stroma where carbohydrates are produced. It is a fact that the Calvin cycle is performed in the stroma where carbohydrates are produced. But what the question is asking for is why the Calvin cycle does not require sunlight. If the question was asking where the Calvin cycle is performed, C would be the correct answer. Don't forget that the choices must answer the same question that is being asked. It replaces the sunlight required for photosynthesis with ATP. The paragraph states that the Calvin cycle uses ATP and NADPH instead of sunlight. And it also states that ATP provides energy for the process, but that does not mean that ATP is the one that replaces sunlight. The passage specifically states that the two compounds have different roles. ATP and NADPH have two different roles. ATP does provide energy for the process. However, ATP and NADPH is what replaces sunlight. If choice D read, it replaces the sunlight required for photosynthesis with ATP and NADPH, D would be the correct answer. To sum up, Type 1 and Type 2 fact questions both require you to compare the paraphrased answer choices and the passage. But when solving questions that ask about major ideas, you must begin with identifying the main idea of the paragraph. And for questions asking about supporting details, you must begin with identifying keywords within the question. When selecting an answer, be aware that an answer choice could be a fact from the passage, but not on what the question is asking for. Choices may also only be partially correct, so make sure to fully read all the choices before submitting an answer. This is the end of the lecture. Thank you for watching.